We're going to talk about physics tonight and what's the matter with physics. Because when we talk about what the world is, we have to talk first about what it means to say the world. And we have to figure out what is the question that we're really trying to answer, because oftentimes these questions that we ask are not actually the right questions. They are the best that we can come up with given everyone's shared assumptions. But what happens with everyone's shared assumptions, or at least the majority of majority opinion involved in the discussion? What happens if their assumptions are fundamentally wrong? What that does is it throws the language. It throws the language and it makes it so that you can't actually ask the right question. And that doesn't mean that you're not what the question that you ultimately want asked isn't the right question. It just means that the question that you actually did ask is not the right question. And even if ultimately the question that you want to ask is true one, then with an actual answer, that doesn't mean that you will get an answer if you ask if the question that you actually ask is the wrong question. So you will not get the right answer. I'm just checking the sound. It's good. But so I think I was just, every now and then I see other YouTubers talk about, like, and I hate to call myself a YouTuber. Every other people with a YouTube channel will talk about, the cringe that they feel, for when they look back at their old content, and I cringe when I look back at the beginning of my stream, even before the middle of my stream sometimes, but or after my streams, I cringe at certain moments, but whatever. So when we say the world, that can mean at least two things. It can mean really only two things, but it can mean more than two things when you add up all the different ways in which people are using the term. But it really can only mean one of two things, and you have to pick which definition you're going to go with. This is a lesson from Sentient Singularity Theory, is that there's always 2 degrees of freedom, and that's it, and you have to pick one. And with language, there's always a definition that is going to be redundant, because there's a word that actually another word that already exists that is defined the same way, and you end up with a synonym, and it's a redundant synonym, and there's no point in having a redundant synonym. So there's only, you should pick the definition that's not fulfilled by another term already. And so one of the things that people mean is they mean the earth. But we have the word earth, so we don't need to say earth. It means the earth when we say that. Or people will use the word the world to mean the universe. But that is, in and of itself, not necessarily what we're talking about, because it's also redundant because we have the word universe. So what is the world? The definition for the world that we should be using when we ask that question? And it would be the structure that you navigate and observe and perceive. That's what the world is. And really what that means is that it is experience combined with causal structures beyond you that form constraints. Now that seems like that might seem like a very technical definition, and I'm trying to say it in more technical ways and also more kind of intuitive ways, but it's the structure that you navigate. And perceive. That's what it is. It's the structure that you navigate and perceive. And that structure includes you. It includes you. It must include you. It cannot not include you. And part of the problem with physics today is that it is assumed that all of these things that we perceive and measure and observe, but they'll say that doesn't mean actually you need a sentient being to perceive it. You could just get a measurement. That's not true. A measurement is an observation, and even if it's by proxy, it's still an observation. If you're using a device to measure something, that doesn't mean you're not measuring it. It just means that you've extended your perception abilities. And that's it. So when people say, "Oh, you don't need a sentient being or someone in order to have an observation," that's nonsense. Like, think about the definition of observation. So, observer in physics. Let's look this up. Definition. In physics, an observer is a person, instrument, or system that measures or interacts with a physical system to extract information. It is not limited to a conscious human. Any physical interaction, for example, photon collision or detector reading, that disturbs a system is considered an observation. The act of observation often alters the state of the system, a phenomenon known as the observer effect. So this observer effect is evidence. I don't proof, whatever. We'll talk. We're not going to talk about whether or not it's proof. It is at least evidence that you can't exclude yourself. And people will say, though, that a photon isn't it's using the term here a conscious human, but let's use the term sentient being instead, because why do you need it why include the term human? It doesn't make sense. It doesn't have to be a human, but a sentient being of any kind, a cell even, a skunk, or a human, but a sentient being that measures or interacts with a physical system to extract information, such as a photon collision or a detector reading. If every time that you make an observation, which includes using a device, that doesn't mean that you are not in the equation. It's just there's a device added to the equation. It doesn't remove you. This is I don't understand why this is so difficult for people to understand, to grasp. Even PhD physics professors will say you do not need a conscious being in order to make an observation. An observer does not have to be a conscious being. That's insane. It is definitionally incoherent. That's what I will say. When you add a device, when you use a device to take a measurement, you are adding the device to the equation. You're not subtracting yourself from the equation. But the thing is that the fact that there's a change in the system that you observe, there appears to be some type of state alteration, is evidence that you cannot take yourself out of the moment. And I think that we need to start using the term moments more, but you cannot take yourself out of the equation. This observer effect seems to show that. And people will say that what this means is that, they'll talk about the double slit experiment, and they'll say that, and I've even said this, I'm guilty of this. They'll say that the fact that when you observe something, that's when it changes how the particles behave, or they'll say things like particles go through both slits and all kinds of things that seem to not make sense. And then it's just assumed that this nonsense is either misunderstanding by the person who said it, often it is, or it's assumed that we just can't understand quantum mechanics, and if you think you can understand quantum mechanics, then you can't understand quantum mechanics. When you look at a wave and you're trying to get a bit of information, what is a wave? It's just, you're looking at something that's, you're looking at movement. You're looking at movement. And when you're looking at movement and you're trying to get a specific piece of information, and you're much, much, much smaller than the movement itself. And it's not even about small. It's about the constraints of mind and the constraints of focus requiring of us of perceiving a single point. It's like when you look at anything, when you make an observation of anything, it requires a focal point, and so that focal point is kind of interpreted as a whole, and that is why it looks like a particle when you're looking at a wave. In a specific moment, you'll look at a particle. It'll look like there's a particle right there, and then they'll say, no, the particles are actually orbiting. It's an electron orbit. The electrons are a particle, and the particle is orbiting, the nucleus of an atom, which is protons and neutrons. But then they'll say, no, it's actually it's a field with waves in it, and how do you make sense of this? And it has to do with the question that you're asking when you're making the observation. And every time you make an observation, you are essentially asking a question. You're going to get an answer. And if you don't do this with the right context regarding your the intention of the observation, then you're not going to interpret the results properly. So the reason why I have this is, and I've showed this before on here, it's called a connectrica if you ever want one. They make mini ones, or at least they used to. It's been years since I bought this in like 2020, I think, because I couldn't leave the house. And it's just a kinetic sculpture. And they have different colors, and you can look it up. I don't know who's the artist that made it, but I looked at it and I was like, that is going to help me teach physics. And when you think about what the universe is, it's as a structure. This is kind of like a simplified model that we're seeing right here. It's a spinning, twisting, moving, nested structure. It's really a being. You are a spinning, twisting, moving, nested structure, just like the universe. And so, but when we want to, if you were to ask what, some questions about this, and I said, do you see the square? Because when you actually make an observation, you're not just asking like, what is this? And even if you did, you'd have to answer with a number of questions, a number of answers. You can be like, it is a square. It is, wires, whatever. You could give probably not infinite, but a lot of different answers. Probably a finite amount but a high finite amount of answers describing this. But if you were to ask a specific question, like, do you see the square? The answer is yes, you see the square. And then, or if I were to ask, is it a square? It's like, yes. Is it squares, multiple? Nested squares? Yes. Is it a wave? Or do you see the wave right there? It's like, yes. And do you see the helix right there? It's like, yes, you do. And so what is it? Is this a helix? Is it a wave? Is it a square? Is it squares? Is it wires? The same problem happens when you ask questions about the universe. Like, is it a particle? Is it a wave? And I mean this for like instances of observation inside the universe and asking about the universe as a whole. Is the universe made of strings? It's like the real. We've got to ask, like, particles of what? People will be like, particles of matter. It's like, no, matter is implying like that there is like a concretized information point that can't be overridden just by our own, individual thoughts alone. So it is beyond us. It exists beyond us. Not completely beyond you, but we are unable to, it doesn't exist within us. Okay. So I know I said that you're part of it, so I don't know if necessarily it's right to say it exists beyond us, because what it really is that it is causally it causally includes us. It includes us, but it doesn't. It's not. It doesn't only include us. It also includes someone beyond you. That's really what it is. It's trying to say this in a way that sounds like physicsy. No, not physicsy for the sake of it, but like in a way that doesn't start to bring in sentience necessarily. But I don't know why I'm doing that, because you can't do it. You have to say it is a structure. Matter is the observation of causality that that includes you and someone beyond you. Like, that's what it is. And yeah, I mean, you can't really explain it accurately without saying someone. And when people say that, what we thought was that the universe was made of this ether, which is like a fluid. That's really what it means. I remember Brian Keating said this to me once, or I think he said it on a live stream that I was watching, but I used to work with him, so I've spoken to him off air a number of times about stuff like this, and he has said probably a couple times, people used to believe in the ether, but then someone disproved the ether, and he gave some reason, and I don't know if he's changed his opinion on that. But when people say that there is an ether, or they argue about whether or not there is an ether, to me, this just seems like a pointless argument, because what you're really saying when you're talking about the ether is you're talking about the fluidity of the universe. And of course, there's movement of things in the universe. Then that is what fluidity is. I mean, if you think about, even from a physics perspective, what a glass of this water is, it's like it's a bunch of particles that are all moving around each other. That's what it is. And so what is the universe? It's like, is it a bunch of particles that are all moving around each other? Yes, it absolutely is. Air is a fluidity, water is a fluid. The universe has a fluidity to it. That doesn't mean it is a fluid. So that's why I'm saying, like, arguing over whether or not the ether exists is like not the right even question. And so the same thing is true of particles, and the same thing is true of waves. Think about this glass of water. We can have waves. Yeah, like Jurassic Park. In this glass of water, it's also a bunch of particles. It's also strings. And when I say that, when you look at water and you have like capillary action, or a fluid, there's like capillary action. It means that there's like there is multiple forces going on, and you've got, you know, gravity, and you've also got water molecules that are trying to stick together. And if you look at like this is a bunch of tiny little magnetic beads. If I mash it up, it kind of like is fluid. But if I pull it, and I'm acting as gravity, but there's also an attractive force between these beads, you'll see that they start to form strings. So like a string is just a structure, and it's just a shape. And so is a particle, and so is a wave. They're different perspectives of change, and that's basically it, of causality. But when we're looking at things, or I mean, it's tough because, like, we'll say I guess you could say it's when we're looking at things, like, but it's but we have to understand, like, the context of what's causing those observations. And when you do that, you realize, like, it's pointless arguing over whether or not this is a square or squares or a wave or a bunch of strings. And same thing with water. Is this, you know, one particle? Is it lots of little particles? Is it strings? You know, if you hit it, is it a wave? I mean, it's all of these. We perceive all of these shapes or these structures, but that doesn't. I wouldn't go so far as to say that it is, that any of those things are. You know, an electron is a particle by its definition, is that it is the observation of a point on a wave. I call them focus points. I think that it's caused by the constraints of our own focus on, like, imagine you're inside of I don't know, like, you know, the elephant, where everybody's looking at it and they're saying, you know, it's they're each describing it as a different thing, but it's a different part of the elephant. Imagine you're, like, very close up to the elephant, and it's moving, and you're, like, looking at it at a certain point. You're looking you're looking at the universe moving. That's what it is. It's a point of focus that is observed by us. That, you know, of like of the universe moving. It's a point of focus that we observe of the universe moving. It's hard because to describe this, because it's very intuitive to say things to start describing things in terms of size. It's like a very small part of the universe. It's like, this is not even about very small. It might be very small in this context, but that's not actually what it's about. When people say things like quantum mechanics is about the very small, and you know, general relativity is about the very large, that's the context that we usually think of these models manifested. But it's not actually about size. So it's not actually about the very small and the very large. It's about two different perspectives. And we'll come back to that another time on what is actually, like, you know, where would you observe quantum mechanics, I guess, outside of, you know, the very small. It's like you experience quantum mechanics, some of it, like the nucleus, like protons and neutrons are probably the first sentient beings inside of the universe, and they are it's just gender on the hadronic scale, probably. We can't know, because you never know whether or not someone else is sentient, but sentient singularity theory models seem to suggest that it is a level of sentience. It seems to have all the constraints and degrees of freedom necessary for choice to manifest, and it observably seems to manifest will, Like they move, they respond to each other. That's, people will say that doesn't mean it's willful. It's like, okay, you stop having any will and then you see if you move. Why would a particle that's not sentient move if you won't move without will? Nothing moves without will. Will is the animating force of everyone. But my point is that like we are experiencing in our social dynamics the same patterns that you can see in protons and neutrons. That's all I'm saying. Even in our social structures, you can see like very similar patterns to like nuclear fission, which is wild, and we'll get into that another time. But so it's not about the very small and the very large. It's about what's your perspective when you are looking at the interaction that you're looking at, and then you'll see things like the patterns that we associate with general relativity, the patterns that we associate with quantum mechanics. But it's not about the very large versus the very small. Why would there be a difference between the patterns that we see that is in different sizes? You can't even say different scales, because I don't even know how much I like to describe it like that, but that implies that there's like a set number of scales. But within the relativistic context of size, why would you see different patterns at different sizes? Like logic is the same no matter how big you are or how small you are, but it's about other things, is my point. All right, I'm going to the chat. Looking at sounding great. My uncle used to make tons of those. Of these? It's pretty cool. I've only ever seen them on this Kinectrica. Let's see if you can even still buy it. Kinectrica. Kinectrica. Sculpture. Can't seem to find it. I can't spell it. That's the problem. Kinectrica. Kinectrica. Huh. Square. It's spelled weird. So here we go. The Kinectrica. It's not Kinectrica. It's Kinectrica. There's no K before the T. So here we go. This is it. Kinectrica. Gosh, I feel like that's gone up in price. Like, it was not that much money when I bought it. I feel like, I don't think it was cheap, but it wasn't that much money. I wouldn't have considered not buying it for that much money. That's crazy. Collection. People were like, I remember when I first started the channel, they were like, what's that behind you? Is that a crown? Like, no, it's not a crown. It's a sculpture that helps me teach physics, because I can't find the right words sometimes. But yeah, here you go. Look at that. There's mini ones. Stands. I always wonder like how much money they make off of those things. It got me with an Instagram ad. But I wouldn't have bought it if I wasn't going to use it for the channel. And it really does help sometimes. But because otherwise it's really hard to describe the particle wave thing, because we navigate the world in terms of size in an obvious sense, but in an intuitive and a constant sense we don't. And that's why it's kind of hard to see the world beyond size. And um, but the foundation of sentient singularity theory, the four primary perspectives, that's what I was trying to do when I deduced those. Um, uh, is I remember, Eric Weinstein was like, we are relativity is our trap. Like it is what has trapped physics. Like it doesn't mean that it didn't enable it as well. Of course it did, but it also trapped us. And um and we haven't been able to break out. He's like, describes it as our prison. And he's right. And I started thinking about it. I was like, how do you escape relativity? Like perspective wise. And which means you have to have also differentiation. How do you have multiple? How do you perceive multiplicity without perceiving I want to say scalability, but a spectrum basically, or I guess you could say scalability, like a sliding scale though, not like an infinite scale, or an infinite line, which is what relativity is about. It's like heavy or big. It's like something is big compared to what, something is heavy compared to what. Something is bright compared to what. Something is fast compared to what. Something is slow compared to what. Something is strong compared to what. So I was like, how do we escape this? And then I was like, how do I understand this is that and that is and not that, but without thinking about size and relativistic descriptions. And then I came up with the four primary perspectives, which is inside, outside, separate, and oneness. And I am inside of my house, which also implies that I'm separate from my house. And that means that I understand what it would mean to be outside my house, because I know that I'm inside my house and not outside my house. Or at least I know that I can understand that my house is outside of me. And I know that I'm one with myself and the house is one with itself. And that's why I know that they're two different structures. And that's how I'm able to understand whether or not I'm inside of it, or what's outside of me. And so these are four simultaneously observed. And then I realized I was like, what does outside mean? I was in this context. And I was like, it means separate from oneness. And what does inside mean? It means separate and oneness. And so, like a fetus inside a mom. And it's like people argue, is it a separate body? Is it your body? It's inside. It's separate and one. See, all of the above. That's the answer. That's why nobody's answered it yet. Or like in the public sphere, it's because they want it to be one or the other, and the answer is both. Separate means inside or outside of oneness. Oneness is outside and inside of separateness. It's like these are co-defining and simultaneously perceived, and they are how you orient anything and anyone, really. Like this is how anyone orients within anything. And so we think about the water. What is the water? The water is inside the cup. The cup is outside the water, and the water is one with the water, and it is separate from the cup. But it's also, when we say, hand me that cup, you hand the cup and it includes the water. So it's like, it's separate and one with the water. But when I say I'm going to consume this water, I don't consume the cup. So this is how we actually orient. It's so constant that we don't even think about it. We feel about it, really. And whereas when we're thinking about size and thinking about brightness and thinking about uh, speed, fast, slow. I have the very first time I ever spoke to Eric Weinstein, I was on his Instagram, and I have like a recording of it, and it's on his Instagram somewhere. From years ago. It was like 2020. I have like a crazy COVID beard, and I look like a crazy person because I just like uh, gotten home from work, and I like ran upstairs because I got accepted into the call, and I had like this huge beard because it was COVID and everybody was just growing out their beards, and it must have looked crazy. But but I asked him some questions about his theory, and we were talking about dimensions uh, and how there's like a 4D structure in his theory that precedes space-time, and how that when he talks about when you take a bite of something, you're having a six-dimensional experience because you've got sweet and sour and salty and bitter, and then there's like umami and like spiciness, and so you're experiencing all of these different attributes of it. And I feel like this is very similar to when we look at the universe, and there's like we can observe particles, we can observe waves, we can observe strings. It's like, what is a string? It's a connection. It's an information connection. Like when people say what string, when people say it's actually strings, we used to think it's particles. Then now we know that it's even smaller particles. And then we thought it was waves, and now we actually think it's strings. It's like this idea that it's one or the other, or it's which is really what they think. They'll be like, well, no, the strings are smaller than the particles. It's like, no, but you're really still saying that ultimately there's only one of them, and you're not realizing that you're gonna see what you're looking for. If you're looking for strings, you're gonna find it in certain places. If you're looking for a particle, you're gonna find it. If you're looking for a wave, you're gonna find it. But what we're really seeing is a structure that we're inside of that is moving around us. And that's what you're seeing. You're also seeing structures outside of you that are also inside of the structure that is around us, that we are inside of, that is moving. And those structures that are next to you, that are also, just like you are, inside of this giant structure that is moving, you're seeing those move as well around you. So everyone, really what it is everyone is moving in this interaction. And protons and neutrons are moving around, and molecules are moving around, and cells are moving around, and organisms are moving around, and the universe is moving, and this in relationship with each other is really what it is. And so when you are trying to think about the universe, and you're like trying to come up with a theory of everything, you're not actually ever able to do it, I don't think, because a thing is an observation. There are multiple theories that are more fundamental than other theories, but that doesn't make them the final ultimate theory of everything, or that there even is one, because it's like, what is a theory of everything about a glass of water? It's like, it's actually made of glass. Okay, it's not just a cup. Okay, sure, it's made of glass. Okay, what is glass? It's actually a bunch of particles of molecules of, is it silica? Or it's made of silica. And so silicon is the element, I believe. Silica is a natural compound that includes silicon and also oxygen. Okay, so silica is silicon dioxide. Interesting. I knew it was a compound, but I didn't know what else was included other than silicon. But you could say, well, it's made of silica. Okay, yes, it's made of silica. Okay, but no, you're like, no, it's actually made of silicon and oxygen. Okay, it's like, but those are actually made of protons and neutrons. Oh no, those are actually made of quarks. And that you haven't figured it out because you got to quarks. But the thing is that you probably have hit bottom. Like, I don't believe we will ever be able to perceive more structures inside of quarks. I think that you've reached the bottom. But what you've reached is pure information. So you're not. It's not like you're actually perceiving something really small. A quark is not something that's really small. What it is it's our observation of a point of force of the universe. It's the universe. It's not even a big thing. It's just something that we're inside of. That's the point. Fundamentally, it's not about size, but it is about perspective. And so we are inside of this thing. It's bigger than us, at least you could say, but and we are perceiving a point of its being, a point of force of being applied of this being that is the universe that we are inside of. And I think about it like, if you imagine I'm behind a curtain and I push my finger on the curtain, and you see this little, like, point, like, emerging out of the ether that is this fabric of space-time. And but really what it is like a much bigger, there's a lot more to that structure than just the point. A quark is not a small thing that is separate from and inside of the universe. It is a point of force being applied by the universe in a specific moment, and that's what it is. But that's why I like the term force point. So to describe what a quark is like, it doesn't have anything to do with size. Whereas like calling it a particle, we think of like a piece of sand or something, some piece that is separate, but it's not separate. Actually, it's a point of force. And calling it a particle doesn't describe its nature. In fact, it kind of gives us the incorrect idea about its nature, because we're contextualizing our observation of it within our limitation, which is you can't see the entire universe because you're inside it. So you can only see specific points of the universe in specific moments. And so that's what we're perceiving. So we have this constraint, but we don't recognize the constraint if we call it a particle, because we assume that it's distinct. So particle, definition. A particle, a minute portion of matter. Tiny particles of dust is the example given. Exactly. That's the problem, is it makes you think it's like a tiny particle of dust. And I'm not saying that it's not. What I'm saying is that you don't understand what dust is. Like, and the intuitive understanding of what a particle is from our perspective doesn't give a fundamental understanding of what quarks would be, which would actually give you a fundamental understanding of kind of what dust is, but it's also not really relevant to look at dust from a fundamental perspective. you'll just be like, it's a bunch of quarks. It's a bunch of force points. Yeah, it's just a bunch of points of force. But the least possible amount, he agrees without hearing, at least the least particle of evidence. Okay, let's look at the etymology. Etymology. Why can't I just spell today? I can't spell etymology. I type it every single week on here. It's weird, the things that we're good at versus the things that we're not. Like, even words that I use every week, I don't know how to spell them. A particle is defined as an extremely small piece or tiny fragment or minute portion of matter, such as dust or a subatomic component. Originating in the late 14th century from Middle English, Middle French, the term is derived from the Latin particula, meaning a little bit or small part, which is diminutive of pars, a part piece. See, the etymology will always give you exactly what is true. Like it appears to. It's definitely going to give you a better definition than and a better understanding than the current common dictionary definition, which changes constantly. I remember in like 2020, 2018, 2017, 2016, they were changing like common terms. Like the dictionary definition of Merriam-Webster. And the thing is that this has been going on forever. But you can't actually change the etymology because it's fixed. It's the blockchain definition. It's the definition that you cannot alter without, leaving the chain, adding to the chain, which means like it leaves behind you don't destroy the information. You just can add to it. You can't change it without others knowing. Blockchain structure is the actual structure of information. Even numbers are blockchain. This DNA is a blockchain. It's a chemical blockchain. Numbers are an informational blockchain. And language is also an informational blockchain. It's like an informative blockchain. Or an informing blockchain. I don't know which one would be better. Probably informing blockchain. Gender. Let's see what it says. Definition: a socially constructed set of roles, behaviors, and norms distinguishing masculine and feminine, often distinct from sex assigned at birth. It represents a personal sense of self-identity, self-expression. Gender types include cisgender, transgender, non-binary. See, this is when you start changing the definition. Gender is by definition dualistic, but it is. And when people say, is it the same as sex? Is it not the same as biological sex? And it's that gender it happens on multiple scales. On every scale of sentience, there is a gendered relationship that manifests. That's why there's protons and neutrons. It's just the active and reactive forces, or the active and reactive roles. That's what it is. And so a proton is the charged force. It's the active force. And then there's the neutral force, which is, or the neutral role. I don't want to say force, but the neutral role, which is played by a neutron, which is not, it's not absent charge. It's charge dependent. So its charge is dependent upon what it's around, basically. Or you could say what its focus is. But it can be negatively charged or positively charged. So I used to, when I was first doing this, I was like, if would protons be male and electrons be female because it's positive and negative? And that's not what it is at all. It's positive and neutral. It's active and reactive. It's not you can't actually have like positive and negative uh, in on a fundamental when describing fundamental relationships. What it on fundamental relationships, it's active and reactive, but or fundamental roles I guess charges, maybe you could say, which is interesting because your charge used to be called your role. Like, what's your charge? So, um, charge definition. The responsibility of taking care or control of someone or something. Your charge. That is amazing. It's like what there's a relationship between protons and neutrons that is about that is hierarchical and is, I guess, causal. There's a directionality to it. There's someone moves and then the other one moves. Um, the active one moves, then the reactive one moves in a manner that is dependent upon the active one's initial, movement. There is no positive and negative on a fundamental scale level, on a fundamental level, or on from a fundamental perspective. That's the right way to put it. Yeah, that's the same thing as saying like bigger and smaller, brighter and dimmer, stronger and weaker, faster and slower. This is charge. This is positive and negative. But that's a relativistic perspective. There is no positive and negative on a truly fundamental level. I understand like people will be like, nah, like electrons are negatively charged and protons are positively charged, but an electron isn't someone, and a proton probably is, and a neutron probably is. An electron is a point of focus that someone observes. It's not actually, it doesn't actually exist. It's a small bit of the universe that you're seeing. Versus like a proton is probably someone who actually exists, like independent of my observation. It's or that their body exists. They are a proton is the structure that is embodied, whereas like there's no embodiment to an electron. We're just perceiving will of something that's not the proton. That's why we're perceiving a charge to it that's different from the charge of the proton. And so we say it's positive and negative charges, but it's really just two different animators to these two different structures. And so it's like the universe is where it has its own will and is taking its own actions. And then a proton also has its own will and taking its own actions. And we're going to see those actions be different. And so we see it as different charges. And that different charges makes us perceive it as in this binary, which is like will manifest as what we call like positive and negative. But really, it's the positive and negative does not exist on a fundamental level. There's active and reactive on a fundamental level. That's it, because it's about someone's. There's no negative person who's negatively charged. It's just that there's people that are active and animating, and then there are and in their focus, like they're focused on that which is beyond them. That's really what that means, is like the active force is like focused on that which is beyond you, and you're moving your willful towards that which is beyond you. Whereas the reactive force is like willful towards you. It's interesting because when you we're getting into gender, but like but I said that I would talk about how certain things, structures that we think of as like quantum mechanics, like the you know like electrical charge, as things that we perceptions that we perceive as manifesting in a quantum mechanical structures are actually present everywhere. And when you like think about gender on our scale, it's like men. Who was the first to go to the moon? Who was the first to build most things that are and go and explore most places? And I'm not saying this to denigrate women at all, but it's men. It's always men. Women go places and do things after men have done them. They don't do. There are things that they can do that they naturally do that we can't. But they don't do things that relate to that which is beyond prior to men doing them. They do them after. It's like women have to go to space after men go to space. Women have to cross the ocean after men cross the ocean in an airplane. And that's just because they're the reactive force. They're following, just like a neutron. And that's fine. Like that, we need that. Like you need that. If they were both, if there wasn't an active and reactive force, we wouldn't be able to be in a cooperative side-by-side relationship, because you would just go your own way, basically. And then what, you won't be together. Like there's no reciprocity when both of you are active forces. It just doesn't work. And it's you can't be tied. That's what I'll say. We wouldn't be tied together. We would be like sometimes aligned when our individual goals and wills aligned, but like we wouldn't be tied to each other the way that we are. And same with protons and neutrons. It's the same exact thing. Like it's fascinating to see. Like that's the observation of quantum mechanical patterns that you perceive in quantum mechanics on the atomic scale, you could say, or the hadronic scale, whatever you want to call it, because it's the same thing. But on our scale, like we're in it, like we're doing those patterns, which is just fascinating. It really is. But you see that in cells too. Charge has to do with responsibility. I really liked that one. Yeah, it does. It has to do with responsibility. It has to do. And here's the thing. I talk about this. We'll have a whole stream on gender and sex soon. But I need to do more prep work for it. And I will also release a pre-produced video about it as well. But like, why I talk about like marriage so much is, and gender is, gender constrains our abilities to, when it comes to how we interact with each other. It is the ultimate constraint of our abilities in the context of each other, of humans. In humans interacting with other humans, gender is the ultimate constraint. It is the dynamic. that is responsible for humans. Um, and the human unit is not actually an individual person. It's actually um, two people coming together. It's the marriage structure, essentially. That is the replicative structure. It's not just reproduction, like, you know, like sexual reproduction alone. It's the joining that is the replicative structure. If people aren't getting married, even if they are having a lot of kids, that doesn't continue to persist throughout generations. It goes away. Even if you have a culture that of people having lots of kids and not getting married, it's not a sustainable culture. It's a culture that burns burns all of its fuel and dies out, basically. Like, it's not a sustainable fire. And so the human unit, a ultimate human unit, is marriage. And but what this causes is that what this means is that gender is the beginning of the understanding of our responsibilities in the context of two other humans. Like, what is your responsibility to other people? Gender is how you relate to. This is your first and most critical context of your most essential responsibilities, because you can't escape it. Like, your gender is not something that you can change. It's not. You can change what other people think of you, of your sex, but like your gender is how you relate to others. It's not really just like how you look necessarily. It's all connected, but it's not how you look. And but like, gender is something that it persists throughout the entirety of the sentient cosmos. It's just a relationship dynamic that's present at every single scale that exists. And it's like, I am the masculine in relationship with my wife, but I am feminine in relationship with God. And because he is ultimately the one that controls the context of our relationship. He's the creator of the context of our relationship. That's true of humans as well. It's like, there's a reason men make the first move. They create the context of the relationship. There is no relationship otherwise. No, women do not make the first move. It doesn't mean like it hasn't happened before. It just means, and even then, it probably wasn't really the first move. It's just like what we think of as the first move usually is what, she did there, but it wasn't that she really did the first move. It's probably you did the first move and you just didn't even think about it as the first move. But there are no marriages without men creating the context of the relationship. And women are focused on men all the time. It says in the Bible, even, it says like, when God curses women basically for eating the fruit of the tree of knowledge, is like, your desire will be for your husband and he will rule over you. And I don't even know if it's so much of like, if it's right to even interpret it as a curse, but it's a consequence, at least. And it just means that, like, you're going to follow him. That doesn't mean like you're going to purposely choose to follow him all the time. It just means like you're not going to be able to help it. And when people say men have to be the leaders, like, we've really developed into gender, but it's okay. I love talking about it. I love thinking about gender. It's amazing. I mean, it makes you appreciate everybody more when you really, it's not this awful, like, oppressive structure. It is constraining, but it is validating of everyone involved. And it is requiring of everyone involved if you have the right context, which is marriage. Um, uh, but if you don't have that, then everybody hates each other. Like, that's what's happening now. But you have just this dynamic of men controlling the context, like, of women, and women are constantly pursuing men. If men go to the moon, now women want to go to the moon. And they're not, it's not that they want to go to the moon. They're not going to the moon. That's not what they want. They want to, I'm not even going to say what they want. It's not about what they want. It's about what they're doing. They're not going to the moon. They're going to men. That's why it's like, it's always like, seen as an achievement when a woman does something, when in reality, like, we should be thinking about it as an achievement for mankind to do anything. And that that doesn't mean it's not an accomplishment for mankind for women to go to the moon. I'm not saying it's not really like a necessary thing for anybody to go to the moon, but if we're going to count it as an accomplishment, which it's an accomplishment, it's a cool thing, but that doesn't mean, I don't think it's a necessary thing for anyone to go. But if it's an accomplishment for men to go, then it's an accomplishment for mankind to go. And if women end up going, especially if it's something like, no, I don't want to say the moon because it's useless to go to the moon really, but going to like the New World, which I don't even know if it's right to call it the New World because there were people here already. Can't really, but to go anywhere, like, if it's that where you're going to have more, where you could be establish humans, then it is also an accomplishment for women to go. It versus like, just going to the moon, where it's like not really necessary, because for any of us to go, but it's an accomplishment, but it's like, it's just different. It's my point. It's just different. It's just different. Whether or not you're going to somewhere that's useful, like climbing to Mount Everest, to the top of Mount Everest, is not a useful thing. Not intrinsically, at least. It doesn't mean that things don't come from it that aren't useful, like, gear or something that can be applied to rescue scenarios or whatever. But you're still like hiking to the top of a mountain for the sake of just doing it. But we know women can do a lot of these things. It's not that they couldn't climb to the top of Mount Everest, and that's why they never did. And it's not like they can't fly across the ocean in an airplane. That's not, and so why weren't they the first to do it? It's not about their inability physically or cognitively, I guess. It's about their focus, the focus of their will being different, being men. Like, that's when it says in the Bible, you will, your desire will be for your husband. Like, so your will be for your, for men. But he will rule over you. It's like, that's just two perspectives of the same thing. It's like, if you're going to follow someone, if you're going to be focused on someone, that's a better way of putting it. Your focus is on someone, they rule over you. This is why I used to have this quote on my Twitter of, if you chase a headless chicken, you become a headless chicken. Or if somebody is acting if you think somebody's acting insane, uh, or and all you're doing is focusing on them, you're ruled by them, basically. Like, even if you don't think about it like that and you're kind of mocking them or whatever, it doesn't matter. Like, you are ruled by them. Even if you're angry about, or you haven't, it's not like an obvious ruling. It's like you're mentally ruled. That's what it is. Or you're mentally ruled. Your focus is you're allowing someone else to dictate your focus. That's the point. Yeah, it's fascinating though. Like, neutrons are ruled by protons or by someone else, which would be, we could say the negative. We perceive it as a negative force, but it's really just another force. It's the will of someone else. It's either going to be they're either going to be focused on protons, or they're going to be focused on they're going to be focused on that which is around them, or they're going to be focused on that, or on the one who is next to them. That's a good way of putting it. On someone next to them, or on that which is around them. That which is around them is like electron. I say that singly because when, it's funny because there's this theory that I have not looked into much, but it's like the one electron universe model. And I hear people talk about it all the time, and they argue about, like, is it correct? And people who are credentialed in physics will mock it as if it's like, schizophrenic nonsense or whatever. Like, I'm not saying that is what even how I think we should be thinking about anything. I'm saying that that's how they view it, is like, that's the woo crazy people who've seen things that aren't there, and which is actually, I think that's a terrible straw man that they've created, which in some ways means like they are focused on something that isn't there, but they've created it, is what it is. It's not that it's not there, it's that they created something and then they're focused on it. But one electron theory. And so the thing is, though, is that if electrons are just a point of focus, of our focus on a larger structure that we're within and that's moving, that's why it's like wave, which wave is just a large structure moving. People will say, no, it's many little structures moving. And again, this is a matter of perspective. Both of them can be true. One electron theory. One electron universe theory, proposed by John Wheeler to Richard Feynman in 1940, suggests that all new electrons and positrons in the universe are a single electron traveling back and forth through time. See, the problem with that is that I'm not even going to say it's wrong. It's that the way in which it's described is not intuitive. And it's not coherent with how we are, at least currently, intuitively and commonly understand those terms that are used, like traveling back and forth through time. It's like, that's not what's happening if you're using the common definition of time. But the common definition of time isn't really correct. It doesn't really exist. So it might actually be more correct in the actual definition of what time would be. But I don't know. I need to think more about it. But the point is that there's a whole, and any electron is just us observing a point of us focusing on a point of that whole from within the whole as it moves around us. And so, is it one electron? It doesn't seem like that's exactly how they're thinking about it, but I don't think it makes sense to say that one electron universe theory, though, because now you're changing the definition of electron to be a synonym for the universe, and you don't need to do that because we already have the term universe. An electron is a term for the point of focus in a specific context. When a being within a larger being views a point of the larger being that it's within, um, or focuses on a point of the larger being that it's within. But see, this is why, like, how do you make sense of what an electron is? How do you, or you are going to argue till the cows come home, and they're never coming home, uh, over whether or not it's strings or a wave or a particle or whatever, and it's never going to end because all of them are equally correct, or all of, I mean, you you could argue that it's either a wave or it's a particle, and you can pick one or the other. But they're, whereas like it's you're still gonna not understand what's actually happening and why it's, you won't understand why you shouldn't be arguing about it. It's just without like the context of sentient singularity theory. You just can't, because the context is someone looking at someone that they are within, focused on a point of someone that they are within. Like that's what it is. Assuming that I'm right, and if I'm right, you're never going to understand the context. You're never gonna understand what it is, because remember, context is information. There is no information that you can gain outside of context at all. And if you don't read English, like, you're not going to interpret any information from a, turning through the pages of a book. It's funny. I have this video of my daughter, and she's like reading through this book, and it sounds like this was like a year ago. I'm actually going to show it because it's funny. And my question when I saw this was, what she's saying, does she know what she is saying? Because she doesn't know how to read, like, that's for sure. So she's not reading the words. And my question was, does she know what she's trying to say, or is she just trying to sound like what we sound like when we read to her? And I don't know, but I think that she knows what she is trying to say, because I don't think that it makes any sense for you to do what, like, to just imitate weird sounds while reading a book that also has pictures. If there was no pictures, then yeah, you're just like, your goal is just to imitate what you saw other people do. But she understood the pictures. And I have videos that show that. Is like, I'm like, where's the red bird? And she points to it. Where I've showed it on the channel. Where's the green frog? And she points to it. And where's the yellow duck? And she points to it. And she's reading this book, and it's like, she knows what these pictures mean. So if it was just a novel with no images, though, and she was doing this, I'd be like, she's just imitating us. But babies don't really care much about books with no pictures because they don't understand anything about what they're looking at. I've never, they don't just sit around constantly looking through books with no pictures and without being able to read. Nobody does that. Why would anybody do that? You think babies are no different from you and me. They just don't communicate as easily, but they don't do things for no reason. Nobody does anything for no reason. Gosh, where is it? I really wanted to show it. Come on. I gotta find it while we're here. But yeah. Anyways, maybe, yeah. Here, I know how I'm gonna find it. Right here. Maybe. I don't know. I'm gonna find it, but I'm not gonna take up the more time on the stream right now. But I will find it at some point. Okay, we're gonna show a clip while I find it. Here, this is the talking about what makes a particle. This bunch of these physicists and philosophers.
Once we thought we knew that they were atoms, and then it became protons and neutrons, and now we're talking about quarks. And so the real question is basically, what makes a particle a particle? Like, at what point do we give it a name and say, okay, this is a thing, as it were? And I think, Hilary, you referred to this as the sort of, there's no end to these Chinese boxes. So what do you reckon? At what point do we say that something is a thing?
Yeah, well, I think, just to pick up on what Tim was saying there, I think the way that he described that is, we've got these different accounts. We've got the particles, we've got fields. Then as an underlying thing, we could have spin networks, we could have strings, whatever. And there's an idea that science usually operates with a rhetoric of, well, we're trying to find the right answer. And of course, that's right. We're trying to find the best account. But the point I would want to make is, you're not going to get to a final account. That's not what's going on. Of course, you can always try and improve account, but usually the notion is that we're getting better, we're getting closer. And I don't think that's what's going on. It's, you can have a certain way of holding the world, and you can apply that, and you can interpret it in that light, and you try and make it work. And you can then have another one which achieves slightly different things, works in a slightly different way, enables you to intervene within that model. And Hawking came to the view in 2012 in his book that we operate within a model theoretic realism, as he put it. And what he meant by that is that we operate within frameworks, theoretical models, and we can't get beyond those models. We can't somehow escape from the model to describe what's ultimately out there. So we should not imagine that at one day you or your children or your grandchildren are going to be told there's one version of what's going on out there, there's really fields, or there's really information, or there's really whatever it is. There will always be a variety of different models, and none of them reach through to say what the world is ultimately like.
I feel like both of you should have a strong opinion about that.
Do you want me to? Well,
yeah, go on.
So
He's right. He's right. Because the thing is, it's that the word world is contextualizing in a way that is what is causing that. It's like we're asking what something really is. It's like, okay. Like, ultimately, things are just observations. Like, they are distinctions in our observations. And that's not something that is even able to be known whether or not it would exist outside of our observations, but it's not even the right question to ask, because ultimately the right question that we really want to ask is like, what is the fundamental nature of existence itself? What is the fundamental structure of existence itself? Like, the most fundamental structure that exists. What is the most fundamental nature of existence? That's really the questions that we want to ask. And those are answerable. But the issue is that they are the answers are very contrary to our currently convoluted common physics assumptions. None of what is fundamental is going to be about shapes, like a particle or a wave, which is just means like moving, or string. And it's like, you can always ask, a particle of what? A string of what? A wave of what? And if you can ask of what, then you haven't hit rock bottom, and or you haven't hit the fundamental, and you will. In order to have a holistic description, you have to describe something's nature and its structure, and a string is when we think about like a particle, a string, a wave. It's like there is an underlying structure present in all of those three terms that is ever present. When I say a string, a particle, a wave, what is the structure that is assumed to be there? Singularity is the structure that is assumed to be there. A string. Even when you say strings, meaning multiple strings, which is just a multiplicity of string, singular. Any multiplicity is just multiples of singularities, multiple singularities. So no matter what, you're and a particle, it's like, or particles, it's like multiple particles, multiple singular particles, multiple single strings, multiple single waves. Singularity is built into or I would say structural intrinsic singularity, or structural singularity is intrinsic to any structure that you propose as being more fundamental. And it's like saying triangles are fundamental, and or pyramids are fundamental. And it's like, well, what about circles? It's these are just shapes. They're like abstract shapes. That's what a string is. That's what a particle, even, you could say is. It's more fundamental than like a triangle or a square or something like that, actually, because it's really about perspective of a singularity. So a string, like a being is a loop of information, which is a string. It's simultaneously entangled strings of information. It's a single being, particle. It's a bunch of moving particles, a wave. It's one moving particle, a wave, with directionality to it. That's a wave. It's one string of information that's directional. That's a wave. It's like these are just none of these are fundamentally competing or even possible structures. They are, all of them, dependent upon the context of the question that's either intentionally or intrinsically asked when we make an observation. But singularity, structural singularity, is built into all of them. It's inescapable. That's why it's like trying to find, the ocean through the water, I guess, or the water in the ocean. I don't know. It's just, it's ever present. And so like distinguishing it from something else is tough. It takes like backing up and looking at it through a different lens than the everyday, which is difficult for most people most days because it's not really relevant to the everyday. It's because singularity it's a structure that's like we perceive it in our feeling almost. It's not like seen in terms of our thoughts. Because the more you think about a structure, more you think about anything, the more like its distinctiveness from everything else around it kind of evaporates and falls apart. But it's about the kind of the less you think about something, the clearer its distinctiveness is, and it's due to your perception of it kind of more in feeling, I guess. Like when I say the cup, it's like you're not thinking about like the cup. It is, the boundary is there, and that is it's like, no, you're feeling something about like that has to do with what you are going to use this cup for and why you want to grab this cup. And that is kind of what is motivating you to take an action that assumes, distinctiveness of the structure. Absent will, their kind of distinctiveness kind of falls apart. And yeah, I mean, it just does. Distinction falls apart, absent will. I mean, even distinction between sentient beings, because it's just a different type of perspective that falls apart. But my will being different from your will is what makes me different from you. If your will and my will are always the same and they cannot be separated, they're always the same. We're the same person. If I can want something different from you, then we are different people, even if we do want the same thing. If we choose like to enter in a marriage, you choose to enter it, and you into a relationship in which your wills are now like aligned in and your constraints are now formed around each other in such a way that your wills are naturally going to align, and you're also choosing to align them in the moments that they're not, but you're also going to naturally have things much more aligned. And it's just because you have a shared fate, basically. You do. That's what it is. It's the shared fate aspect of it. It's fascinating. I know I'm kind of like going off on tangents, but it's amazing. Some of this stuff just blows my mind. I don't even want to say it blows my mind. It amazes me, or fascinates me, and amazes me. God amazes me. Things fascinate me. But things in and of themselves are not really actually amazing when you think about it. It's always someone that is responsible for the thing that is amazing, whatever it may be. You can't even say like, oh, McLaren F1 is amazing. It's like, McLaren F1 doesn't do anything and didn't exist on its own. Like, there was a guy who made it. He's amazing, like, that's the reality of it. The guy who designed the McLaren F1, that guy's amazing. It's my favorite car. It was like the coolest, fastest, most expensive car in the 90s when I was a kid. And it was $1 million when it came out. And Elon Musk crashed one within like 5 minutes of him taking delivery of it. And there's probably not, I don't know how many there are in the world today, but it's in the double or low triple digits probably. And they're now $30 million each instead of 1 million. So It's like when you get accused of a crime, you've been charged. Yes. Or when you're in a position to give orders, you're in charge. Yes, exactly. Um, uh, um, and only someone can be charged because it involves will. Exactly. 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 Nice RWAP, and you're getting it. It's always cool when like to see like people start like grasp this stuff. I think that once you kind of get the gist of sentient singularity theory and it makes sense to you, like the basics make sense of why it makes sense. A lot of things become very intuitive, and so intuitive that you don't even realize how intuitive. Like charge and charge aligning, charge of a particle and charge when it comes to like your role and who's when you're someone in a relationship. It's like, or when someone's in your charge, you are responsible for them. And when you are in charge, you are you rule over them. And all of these things are all these definitions are perfectly aligned with charge if it means will, which is what it is. That is exactly what it is. The reason these magnets stick together is not because every magnet has its own will. It's because the protons and neutrons and molecules, even probably, that make up these atoms, that make up these little spherical magnets, they all have will, their own will, and their will is for each other to enough to overcome gravity. So like this, you are seeing the manifestation of, in this string of magnets, will holding it together. But it's not the will of the magnets. There's no will to the magnets. This is where panpsychists get it wrong. And the reason why they get it wrong is because they're focused on size. It'll be, that's why they think that like everything is conscious in some way that they can't explain, because you end up being like animal consciousness and plant consciousness, which is higher than animal consciousness, which has nothing to do with size. But then they'll scale it up. They'll be like, then there's like ecosystem consciousness, and it's like, okay. And then they'll scale it up. They'll be like planetary consciousness, solar system consciousness, galaxy consciousness, universal consciousness, and there'll be like crystal consciousness, then plant consciousness, then animal consciousness, then Earth, planet consciousness, Gaia or something. And you're jumping between size and between your own perception of animacy, which neither one of those has anything to do with whether or not like someone is sentient. Like it's possible for there to be an animal that does not ever move and looks like a plant. And then it's possible that, and there are animals like that exist, basically. There's like sea worms and coral polyps and all kinds of things. And then there's that don't appear to move; they just appear to grow. But then there's a tree, and it's like these are. It's not about like the ability to move around. Like it's their crystal. A crystal does not have a consciousness to it. Like I have this geode right here that I cracked open as a kid with my dad at the Gem and Mineral Show in Tucson, which is amazing. It's like a world like recognized event every year, and it is people come from all over the world. It is amazing. They sold geodes last year there that were like 25 feet tall, and they sold them for millions of dollars. But they bring them to the Gem and Mineral Show. It is an actual amazing event. But they had geodes, just rocks that you could use this device to crack open, and my dad got one and we cracked it open. This was from that. I can't believe I still have this. I was probably like 6. Pretty wild. But where is the crystal like that has the consciousness? Is it that one? Is that one different from that one? Is it all one? What about the pieces that broke off of this? Like this is why it just doesn't work. You need the 4 primary perspectives to do this, which is inside, outside, separate, and oneness. And then you realize it's about nestedness is how you actually like track these, and then how you check them as best you can is by looking at their constraints and degrees of freedom and the patterns that they are embodied in, and you see whether or not those patterns, those symmetry patterns, allow for the perception of choice. It's like, this is why a quark is not a single sentient being. It's a point of force from a single sentient being. It's, God behind the curtain, and he's poking the curtain and you're seeing his finger, and that is a quark. And but the quark is not someone, because there's no pattern within it, of the symmetry pattern within it that allows for perception, which is you need that, like whereas a proton and a neutron, they first of all actually seem to be animated when you actually look at it the right way, and they also have this symmetry pattern within them of quarks. And so a proton has 2 up quarks and a down quark, and a neutron has 2 down quarks and an up quark. And what this does is it's a binary triadic pattern. So it allows for a weighted differentiation at least at a minimum, which is what you need in order to make choices. And a mind is just an information structure that is a certain type of symmetry that that allows for choice when animated. Like that's you, if you're not able to make choice at any point, then you are not someone separate from anyone else. Like so, but the reason why this binary triadic pattern is necessary is because it's the first structure that you see that has the kind of a binary aspect to its symmetry pattern, because it's only up quarks and down quarks that make up hadrons. But there's a weightedness to it because each one has more of one type than another. So neutrons have more down quarks than up quarks, but they're only made of up quarks and down quarks. And protons are have more up quarks than down quarks, and but they're only made of up quarks and down quarks. So you need that pattern manifest for information to be present within you of a weighted differentiation, it's like mentally, and we have this as well. And It's just, you have to think about it differently because we are thinking about ourselves and we're thinking about a mental structure. You don't think about, you can look at physical structures, but like, it's not about just physical structures in the way that you think about it. It's about like, how would you divide up those physical structures that would, in some way, they would form this pattern. Yeah. Anyways, let's go to the chat. Did you hear about Elon's next space idea is to do? No. Go to the moon. That's what I heard. He said he's scrapping Mars for now and saying we should go to the moon. That's what last thing I heard, which I think is a good idea. I don't think it's a necessary thing, again, to go to the moon. It's definitely not necessary to go to Mars or the moon, but it's also like not so awful to go to the moon because at least like you can talk to people on the phone while you're there and you can come back within a week. Whereas you go to Mars, like you're losing real-time communication with people on Earth. That sucks. And it's like, even if you had access to like technology that allows you to transcend the boundary of space-time or the constraint of space-time, and you could just instantly teleport basically from Earth to Mars, how often would you go? You go at least once because you're curious. Take a look. It's going to look like a lot like the most barren desert that you could find on Earth. And it's going to look like probably the most boring place that you could possibly find on Earth. That's what it will look like. That doesn't mean there might not be a pretty view of like Olympus Mons, giant mountain, but like how many times would you go look at it? And there's just, you wouldn't even go off, you would more than once if you could teleport to Mars, most likely, unless you were like convinced that there's something there and you're like searching for it. But you wouldn't be going because you're seeing something new all the time and it's super interesting, and or you really need to go because it's very important, like, or else, you need to go to Mars or else like people's lives are depending on it. That's not going to happen. The Sahara Desert is more interesting, way more interesting than Mars. Mars is only interesting because we haven't been. But after you go, it's going to lose its being, how interesting it is. I think this is what happened with the moon, and that people nowadays who weren't alive when we were going to the moon have no idea. And we hear about it. We're like, well, yeah, I mean, the public lost interest. It's like, it's not even just the public lost interest. It's like there was nothing new for anyone to see when they were going. It's like, okay, we took a car, drove around. It's like, we see people drive around here. You didn't really do anything that different. It's just kind of cool to do on the moon, maybe for like, and to watch other people do it on the moon for once or twice. But after that, what are you going to see there? What else is there to see and to find? Probably not much. Even if they find water on the moon, I think there's water on the moon. Why wouldn't there be water on the moon? So what? Like, that doesn't impact humanity at all. It might help if you want extra water on the moon and you want to open a hotel on the moon, but it's not like people need the water from the moon or else like they're gonna die. It's like, just don't go to the moon. There's a movie on Netflix it's a Korean movie. It's dubbed, I forgot the name of it, but it's about, I watched it with my wife, like, God bless my wife, because sometimes I know she has such little interest in watching a movie that I want to watch, and she'll get into it once we start watching it. Like right now I'm not a Godzilla fan. I've never been like interested in Godzilla, but I started watching Monarch on Apple TV, which is about Godzilla. It's a show. It's actually really amazing. It's really well done show for Godzilla, and I'm not even a Godzilla fan. But when we had friends that were like, oh, we're watching Monarch. And I was like, Godzilla. It's not an interesting like lore for me. And then I watched it one night when my wife fell asleep because I was bored. And the other show we watched ended. And then she woke up and I'm like, you're going to watch Godzilla with me. And she did. Because I rule over her. I'm just kidding. But not really. So Tyler, did you hear like 1 week ago that they moved antiprotons at CERN, drove it around the parking lot basically? That's a first for humankind. I didn't hear about that. I don't know how useful that is. I need to look into it more, but it's interesting. I tend to not be that interested in CERN, I will say. I feel like it's like the moon. It's like going to the moon. It's like it resulted in some really interesting things, or could result in some interesting things, but like for only how long? You know, there's this idea that a lot of people had, this like, if only we could just have a particle accelerator that was big enough, then we would definitely be able to know the theory of everything. And it's like, that's not, you don't understand what's even going on if you think that. And when does it end? You just make another particle accelerator that's even bigger after that and if that's the case, then there's no, when are you going to get the theory of everything? It doesn't, you're constraining like understanding the fundamental nature and structure of the universe to the context of size, and it's just not going to work. It's not relevant. Size is not relevant to understanding the universe. Fundamentally, you need to understand the primary and fundamental and inevitable nature and structure of the universe, and that is sentience and singularity. It is the ever-present always. Everything that you look at is thought of singularly. You are embodied and conceived of by others and by yourself, and experienced by yourself as singular being, and you don't experience yourself as as billions of cells. I don't know if it's billions or trillions that make up the human body, but how many cells? How many cells in the human? 30 to 37 trillion human cells. Though the estimates range from 20 to 100 trillion, depending on the person's size, age, and sex. A male has about 36 trillion cells, while a 154-pound male, which is about exactly what I weigh, literally probably exactly what I weigh, down to the pound, at least. I weighed myself last night. I was like right at that. Has 36 trillion cells, whereas a 132-pound female has about 28 trillion cells, and a 10-year-old child has about 17 trillion. Interesting. Makes sense. Huh. But you don't experience you through 36 trillion cells. Like you experience you as one experience, not 36 trillion experiences. One experience. Your body fundamentally embodied in 36 trillion cells, or across 36 trillion cells. Like fundamentally, your body is not a heart and lungs and stomach and a bladder, and it's an assembly of cells. Like that's, from a fundamental perspective, what is a human body? It's an assembly of cells. It's not It's not a construction of organs. That's a relativistic perspective of a human body, but it's not a fundamental perspective of a human body. Fundamental perspective of a human body is that it is an assembly of cells with a sentient someone stacked on top of the assembly of those that assembly of cells. So you're talking only about sentient someones in and their relationship with each other. They are within you. They're with, you could say, the 36 trillion cells are within the one human being. But and the reason why is shared fate. If I leave this body, if I die, every cell in my body is going to die. And it's shared fate. It's not. That's why they are like, when people say, are your cells you or are they separate from you? It's like they're both. They're inside of you. They're separate and one with you. But are you but you are like outside of your cells. And so you are separate from one with your cells. That's why if you die, all your cells die. But if your cells die, some of them, not if all of them die, you're going to die. But like if trillions of your cells can die at once, basically, and you survive, like you can cut someone's arm off, essentially killing trillions of cells, and you're going to still be here. That's the difference between, like, if you look, cells are inside of you. They're separate and one with you. Whereas we are outside of our cells. So we are separate from one with our cells. So it's like, there's a directionality to it. That's critical. So when you ask, what is the universe? Like, what is the universe, at least? Fundamentally, it's not strings or particles or circles or squares or waves. It's an assembly of sentient beings inside of a single sentient being, just like us. There's a fundamental perspective of human body, and there is a relativistic perspective of human body. In the relativistic perspective, you have strings of nerves, strings of veins, strings of muscle tissue and tendons and hair. You have waves going through your body all the time. That's how you move food. Every time you move at all, anything, there's a wave going through my body right now. Like, and every time you get up or sit down, there is a wave. And there's a bunch of particles, you could say. Those particles are just perceived distinctions. And sometimes those perceived distinctions will be actual distinctions, which is a distinction in will, which would be like your cells. But sometimes those distinctions are not actually fundamental distinctions, and that would be like your heart. It's like where does, you could say your heart is part of your cardiovascular system, and that is, you could just continue to like think about it from different structures in your body from different perspectives. And that is like thinking about the universe in terms of particles and waves and strings. It's endless. It's endless. There's an ether to your body. It's mostly fluid, but it's also a singular thing, and it's made of perceived distinct structures and also singular sentient beings. So, like this is why context is everything, and they're wrong about the fundamental context. It's not even that they're missing the fundamental context. They're not looking for it. I'm in an argument like right now I was like going back and forth a little bit with Stefan Molyneux, who is a philosopher who would call himself an atheist. And he's one of the most talented like living philosophers today. Like as far as just philosophical talent. And I remember finding him when I was still a self-described atheist, and he had seen some things in societal statistics and regarding, like, I was researching gun control laws because there was a bunch of mass shootings in like 2014, and everybody was talking about, gun control, and I didn't understand it. And I was like, I'm gonna try and my job is very centered around statistical analysis. I can download FBI crime statistics going back decades and segment it by all these different ways, and look at it in all these different ways and compare it to laws in different states and laws passed at different times and see, what impact do these things have. And I remember there was like a huge public, nationwide debate, and like Obama had a town hall about it and everything. And I saw a video by Stefan Molyneux that was like him dissecting the stats, and he has a very good understanding, a natural ability to interpret or intuit relevancy, which is what is necessary for any kind of understanding. But it's it's a necessary philosophical skill. It's a necessary skill all the time, but it's the ability to do it abstractly is necessary philosophical skill, especially. And it is a philosophical skill, is understanding relevancy, which is understanding context, which is understanding that's how you understand information. And he came to the same conclusions that I had about it, and he laid out like the case of like why certain things that people were talking about are relevant, and why certain questions and things that people had framed were just not even the right goal and the right question to ask, I guess. And I then started watching a bunch of his philosophy videos, and he talked about gender that were in ways that were like really wise, some of them, and just kind of talked about personal experiences that highlighted like our own gender constraints and ties to each other, and inability to actually not separate like men and women. And I was like, this guy is very, very, he's a good philosopher. But then I became a theist, and he's still a very talented philosopher, but he's a self-described atheist, but there is no such thing as an atheist. You can only be an anti-theist, which means you don't believe that existence itself is fundamentally, initially, and inevitably sentient. And you disbelieve it. You believe that existence is fundamentally, initially, and inevitably inanimate. And but you believe somehow that this fundamentally, primarily, initially inanimate structure somehow becomes animated. But regardless, But he was making this case. He's and this is where he's just wrong, and it limits his philosophy so much. You can have all the philosophical talent in the world, and you will still never understand understanding itself without the context of theism. And I was going back and forth with them about it on Twitter, like yesterday, and tried to today. I don't know if he answered me. I try not to get on Twitter very much because I get sucked in, but let's see if but yeah, see, but he stopped answering me, and I know he saw what I said because it was a response to his response to me, and like, you don't not read that especially when you've responded to other people. But he didn't respond, and that means like checkmate basically. But also like, he's unwilling to move on his definitions of like what he would call like God, basically. And people in physics do this as well, and that is it comes from a lack of humility. And it's not like, I don't say that as a criticism. Like, humility is actually like a skill that you have to like train with. Like, it's a skill that you develop. I know that because I have gone through periods of my life where I was not so skilled, and usually, but sometimes I would, be able to do it. But it's always like in moments that you care about something else more than you care about winning. And like, if you don't believe in that there's a being beyond you whose will is present and will be done, like, it's really hard to not care so much about winning, to not naturally place it as like the highest priority. Whether you're a physicist or you are a philosopher arguing with people on Twitter, or a physicist arguing with people on stage, somebody can lay out like the most like obvious argument for why even just your definition of something shouldn't be the definition used, and you'll just continue using that definition, because to use the other one you might see that you can't really win, even if you don't like understand why that necessarily, like, you're not convinced that they're right about like the overarching argument. You're still not going to budge on, you're not going to acknowledge that their small thing is correct. So my point is, like, what did I say? I said, but physicists are doing this too, and they assume that existence is not fundamentally or primarily sentient. And even though like you can't actually make the argument for that, because your own when you're actually thinking about it properly, like you have to think about your own existence, and part of it is also just misdefinition of like words. But my point is that they won't budge on the definitions, and who gets to decide the definition of words? Are the people that would use that believe that those that those words are necessary to describe things that actually exist. So if you disbelieve in the sentient in existence being fundamentally and primarily and initially and holistically a singular sentient being, or at least an all-encompassing sentient being, then you don't get to tell me what the definition of God is. Like, if you don't believe in God, you don't get to tell me what the definition of God is. You have to listen to the people who claim to believe in God, what the definition of God is, and then you also have to think about what the definition must be, because there is an inevitable definition of God in the English language, and it is the singular, initial, all-encompassing, and structure that is existence itself, and having a nature that is sentient. It's a someone. God cannot. People say, well, what if God is math? God can't be math. Math is math. Like, God is someone, or else God doesn't exist. Like, but what did he say? He said, where is it? He said to me here. He's going back and forth with somebody. He said, he's talking about, like, who created God. That's what they're talking about. And they're going back and forth. And he's saying that, that basically, that you can't have God must have a cause in order to exist, and that means that he's not God, basically. So he was arguing against the idea that of an unmoved mover, or of an uncaused causer. That's basically what it was about. And I asked him, I said, does existence itself require a cause? And he said, no. And I said, exactly. Existence intrinsically exists by definition and by nature, not by outside cause. Existence is also definitionally and apparently an information system that is inevitably and entirely self-referential, since it's all there is. Sounds like a self-aware and uncreated being to me. And that's what I said. And so if you think about it, like, the logic makes sense. And that's why I then said, does what I say make sense? And he didn't respond, probably because it does make sense. But that doesn't mean I've convinced him of everything else, that his definition of God is wrong, and that, then he started asking about, how can a being be all powerful, if they don't know the future? Because basically he was like, how can God hold you accountable for things that he knew you were going to do? Basically insinuating that you have no ability to make choices. That's why you're able to be predictable. And if God is going to know everything that you're going to do, then how can he hold you accountable, because you can't surprise him? And I don't know who said that God knows everything that you're going to do before you do it. And I was like, and so did a few other theists. They were like, God doesn't know everything that you're going to do before you do it. You still have free will, and that's where they usually leave it. But I've thought more about how to talk about these things, and I was like, being all knowing. He was like, then he then said, well, if he doesn't know what you're going to do in the future, then how can he be all knowing? And I was like, all knowing means knowing all that has happened and all that is happening. It doesn't mean knowing what every choice that anyone who does or doesn't exist may or may not make in the future, because that doesn't even exist. You can't know that which doesn't exist. And that's a pretty obvious thing. And but it's kind of like, I get why you would think all knowing means knowing that which is, hasn't even happened yet. It hasn't even been chosen yet. And those are two different things, like, you can know what's going to happen when you throw a ball from one person to another. That's why if you're well practiced at throwing, like it's going to land right where you want it to. But that's physics. That's not choice. But then there are choices being made. It's like throwing the ball. It's like, could you have predicted that they were going to throw the ball? Yes. Can you know who they're going to throw the ball to if there's multiple people to throw the ball to before they throw the ball? No, you can kind of predict it, but like you can't really know it. And for even just side tangent, but for him to say, God, how is it right for God to hold people accountable if he knows what they're going to do before they do it? He doesn't always know what you're going to do before you do it, but usually probably he knows, probably more so than we even know what we're going to do before we do it. But as soon as we make a choice, he's aware of it. He's aware of us even thinking about the choice as we think about it. But because he's all knowing, he's knowing of all that is, which is all that is happening, which also means knowing all that has happened, because knowing what is happening is dependent upon knowing what has happened. It's only happening because of what has happened. But like what will happen, there's logical constraints which manifest as physics in our perception of the world beyond us. And then there's choices. And like you can usually know what somebody's going to do if you know them well enough. Like I know usually what my daughter's going to do before she does it. And just because you can predict that doesn't mean she didn't make a choice, which means like, doesn't mean you can't punish them for it. That doesn't mean I think that even God like goes around trying to punish us all the time now. I think like he's probably the best parent in the world, which is like, that means the best parent that could exist even. It just means like, and he intentionally created us not to punish us. So it's like, sometimes the punishment is just what happens when you make a bad decision. It's like you decide to not eat. It's like now you're going to feel faint. It's like some things are just a consequence that's intrinsic, but at the same time, sometimes things are punishable, intentional punishment. And it's like, I usually know what my daughter's going to do when she does it, before she does it. Sometimes she surprises me, but even when I correctly guess what she's going to do before she does it, that doesn't mean like it absolves her of responsibility. I don't like punish my daughter, but she has entered the terrible twos. They are real, by the way. Like they are absolutely real. I'm still trying to figure out exactly what's going on with them, but it's definitely the exploration of the limits of your ability to manifest your own agency. That's for sure. Which is going to end up resulting in frustration when combined with a lack of wisdom regarding consequence, and also like in the context of your parents who do understand what's probably going to happen if you climb on top of the chair and start jumping. It's either they let you do it and you fall and get hurt, and that's a bad experience, or they stop you from doing it. You don't know yet why they stopped you from doing it because you haven't fallen off the chair yet, and it's still a bad experience for you because you can't do what you want. I walked in, my daughter took a bicycle, her little toddler bicycle. She somehow got it on top of the chair, and then got on top of the chair, and then got on top of the bicycle. So she's basically sitting on top of a bicycle on top of a chair in our house. And it's like she's never fallen off the bike before. So she doesn't know what can happen. Okay. Let's see. I just walked through the door. When you're in a position to give orders, you're in Georgia. Yes. Okay. Elon wants to put solar panels out in space around closer to the sun. He's thinking Dyson sphere. I hate it. It's just, I don't know how I feel about it. I don't have an opinion on it really. Like, I think that there is enough of an ability to get energy from Earth to be on Earth, or be in Earth is probably almost like a better way of thinking about it. There's enough energy in Earth for those who are in Earth. I don't think that there's really a need for solar panels around the sun outside of Earth, except to power things that are outside of the Earth, like satellites. Alive must eat to live. Yes, the matter is like frozen energy. I get why you would say that. I don't know how much that actually like helps get us anywhere. There's this documentary that's called oh gosh, what's it called? What is Everything, I think. What's it called? What is reality? Clip from What is Reality? And what is reality? I hate that word. It's like saying what is the world? But it's worse. So this is it.
I want to tell you about the universe. What it is, how it came to be, what its building blocks are. I want to tell you how the future creates the past, which then creates the future. But first, I want to tell you about crystals. You might be surprised to know that a crystal isn't an expensive piece of glass or a chandelier in some fancy dining room. The word crystal simply means a pattern that is periodic. Look at this checkerboard pattern. See how it continues to spread out infinitely in each direction? That means it's a periodic pattern. So that's a two-dimensional crystal. This is another two-dimensional crystal. And this is another. You can also have three-dimensional crystals. By the way, this 3D glass is called crystal because its atoms are actually arranged in a crystalline pattern. For a particular 8D crystal, yep, that's right, an 8-dimensional crystal is projected to 4D at a very particular angle, which forms a 4D quasi-crystal. And from this 4D quasi-crystal, they derive a 3D quasi-crystal, which they believe is the fundamental substructure of all of reality. This 3D quasi-crystal has a fundamental building block, a tetrahedron, which is a 3-dimensional equilateral triangle. The size of each edge on this shape is the smallest possible length that can exist. This is called the Planck length. It's 10 to the 35 times smaller than a meter. So you know how your TV screen is broken down?
This is there's a reasons why you arrive at like a tetrahedron for primary perspectives, but it's still wrong. You guys, you're thinking about shape. And of like physical shape, and you're thinking about size. You're like, this length here is the smallest possible size. It's like the Planck length. I'm not even saying that that's not something that you can observe. It's just not going to tell you anything about what the fundamental nature and structure of the universe really is. Like, it's not a tetrahedron. I mean, you, in some ways, it's a four-dimensional, but it's four-sided in a way, which is these four primary perspectives is like kind of structurally how we, like, it's a fundamental structure because it's the fundamental structure of mind, and we are within a mind. But the fundamental structure real, even more fundamental structure of mind is someone. You are a mind. And you're one mind. Your mind internally has a certain symmetry structure to it that is quadratic, and at least, but it's also dualistic or binary. It has a binary symmetry to it, and it also has this triadic aspect to it as well. And when you have that, all combine all of that together, you kind of get like a a shape composed of four-sided triangles, four triangular sides in a way. But that has an orientation to it. So like there's a points up. There's like an up, down, and a down part of this. But that's still just a manifestation of your mind looking at at certain contexts of certain interactions. It's not actually fundamental. And if you're thinking about size at all, you're definitely in the wrong spot. But there's this point in this video where they talk about like energy versus information versus matter, and it's fun.
Not information.
Yeah.
Gentlemen? But those that don't agree if it's not information. Gentlemen?
Reality is made of information.
Nope.
Yes, it is made of information.
No.
Okay, so what is it made of if not information?
Energy.
Energy is information.
That's stupid.
Energy is the potential for a particle to change its position. Potential is information. Energy is information.
No.
It's information. Then what is it?
Not information.
And what is it?
Not information.
It's like, is it matter? Is it energy? Or is it information? It's like, is it a string? Is it a particle? Or is it a wave? It's the same exact thing. And it's just manifesting in a different instance in which we're arguing about it. Is it actually matter? Or is matter? Or is it energy? Or is matter energy? Or is energy information? Think about what information is. Like really, like what is the context of information? Someone. That's the context of information. Reality cannot be fundamentally information. Because information is dependent upon the existence of someone. So to be informed or to be informing, like there doesn't exist. There's no information absent someone. And they talk about that a bit in here, but they talk about consciousness, and he's closer to correct than he's closer than the mainstream. Clee Irwin, he's the one who runs the Quantum Gravity Research Foundation, which is the organization that put out this documentary. I highly suggest watching it. I've done a stream on it here actually. You can search it probably in my videos if you want to watch my commentary, but you should actually just also watch it. And it is very well done, and but it is also like there are some things that they're doing wrong.
Let us start with the idea of the collective behavior of cells in your body, each a single-celled microbe living its life. A long time ago, only this sort of cellular life form existed here on Earth. These little guys were not too smart, but they did choose what direction to swim and could chase nutrients, reproduce, and run from dangerous things. They made choices with their very simple systems of environmental awareness and desire to survive. Then they self-organized into colonies that were smarter as a group and had more environmental awareness than the individuals.
That's not exactly like all that has happened, though. There's something that goes on behind the metaphysical curtain that unifies an assembly of multiple beings into a single, a body that and then a single being is stacked on top of. There are assemblies of cells that work together, that self-assemble and organize, self-organize, to something that works better, or that is beneficial, but for all of them. But that's not. If that's all that happens, then you get what it's called a corporism, or a pseudo-singularity, not a singularity. It's like a Portuguese man of war versus a single jellyfish. A Portuguese man of war is it's a collection of different animals that have basically, formed a cooperative relationship with each other, but it's not the same as like the cells of you. That's not how a human being was made. It's a bunch of cells decided to come around and like assemble into and work together and build a human body. That's not all that has happened to create multiplicity, a multicellular organism, like that is truly sentient, a singular sentient being. There's something else that goes on. I think that I have some ideas about what happens there and like what that process is like, but ultimately, it also will definitely involve the choices of God, because like someone new is being embodied there. It's not that those cells construct a new someone. They might come together and construct a body that is inhabitable by or able to be embodied by a soul, essentially by someone. But ultimately, whether or not that soul or that someone or that bit of will is partitioned off of from God, which means he's sacrificing some of his will, which basically means like he's partitioning a bit of will from his own, which means that it's not freedom of will is like when your will doesn't have to be it's independent from anyone else, like, and if you do that and you're God, you're like, you are will itself, and then all of a sudden you give up some of it. It means like you're allowing of it to inhabit a structure that allows has the right symmetry structure for choice is to be made, and you are allowing it to, you're partitioning some of your will off, and which basically like means like you're not trying to control it anymore. It's not your will anymore. You gave it up. You sacrificed it. You gave it away. That's not something that comes from building, that cells can build. It's something that God has to partition from himself and give up intentionally by choice, because oneness is his nature. Oneness of will is always the nature of someone. And so any choice to sacrifice your will is against the nature of someoneness, and so it must be a choice. It must be chosen. It cannot be. It's not something that happens without a choice, like rolling down a hill or drifting down a stream. It's like swimming upstream. It has to require a choice. The nature of the stream is to swim, is to flow one direction. That means like the nature of floating in the stream is to go one direction. But if you're going to go the opposite direction of the nature of the of the flow of the stream, which is you are choosing a path that is not the default, it's going to be requiring of choice, which is interesting because, like, for God to give up his own will, a bit of his own will, requires his own will. And it's odd because, like, the more he does that, the stronger his will actually is, because it's not actually about, like, size. Even though he's partitioning some of it off, your agency, your power, I guess, your willpower is about your ability to make choices in instances in which like make intentional choices. And there's no more intentional choice that has ever been made than God choosing to make others. It was the most intentional choice. And the more he does it, more will he sacrifices and gives away, the stronger his willpower kind of is. I don't even want to say stronger, but, like, the more he exercises his willpower, which is just interesting to think about. It's it also, like, the more kind of the more he meaningful he becomes as well, because there's more people to be meaningful too. It's like I've said before, fundamentally addition and subtraction are the same thing. You gain when you subtract from a fundamental perspective. Like in this case, it's like God is subtracting some of his being from his being, meaning, like, some of his will. He's sacrificing some of his will. He's subtracting it, which really is the same thing as adding will somewhere else, which is to someone else. It's not to somewhere else, but it creates someone else, and you add when you subtract in that way. Just like when a cell divides, it to multiply. It's like it's multiplying by dividing, because you're looking at a fundamental structure, doing this transformation, and they're actually the same thing. Like addition and subtraction, multiplication and division are like the four primary perspectives in a way. Whenever a cell multiplies, it is adding another cell to the world, and multiplying itself in a way by dividing itself, and it's adding another cell to the world by subtracting some of itself, some from itself, and adding it somewhere else, which ends up being creating of or adding of someone else, which is just amazing. And when I don't think that it's like the more when you start thinking, it's like, is God selfish or is he selfless? And it's like both. He's maximally selfish because he's maximizing his own meaning every time that he's creating someone else, but he's also like maximizing his his grace every time he creates someone else as well, which is like he is self-sacrificing in a way. It's like the more self-sacrificing he is, the more meaningful he becomes, the more power he has over, the more beings within him, the more powerful he actually is, because fundamentally, like, power is over oneself and others, I guess. And like for him, his power over himself is power over us because we are within him. It's like power over your own body is also power over your own cells. And it's weird. It's like, it's this contradiction. But, you know, Stefan Molyneux is missing it, unfortunately. He said, what was it? He said, here. That basically God was that was a contradiction, basically. What was it? Where is it? He said, he's been going back and forth with people. He said, self-contradicting entities cannot exist because somebody said atheism is doing the same thing as religion is claiming to have knowledge of the unknown. That guy's kind of like onto something, and he's kind of right. But somebody said, I guess I am needed again to explain to people that atheism is in fact a belief. I will take on any challenges. Okay, and then he basically said, atheism is the understanding that self-contradictory entities cannot exist. There is no such thing as a square circle. There's no such thing as consciousness without a brain. First of all, that's, how does he know that's the case? Like, that's just probably almost certainly false. Like, you can never know the sentience of somebody else for sure, 100%. But logic regarding a self-referential inevitability of information within of existence itself sounds like self-awareness. And also, just if you look at cells under a microscope long enough, they're gonna look like little animals, and you assume animals are sentient, and cells don't have brains, but like they act exactly the same. And if you start looking at protons and neutrons in from a certain way, they act exactly like men and women do with each other, and they don't have brains. So he's got this assumption here that is massively throwing him off, probably. But he said, a being cannot be both all-powerful and all-knowing, since these properties contradict each other. Only if you misdefine all-powerful and all-knowing. But, like, you know, regardless. This is the issue is that he's not going to budge on these definitions that he holds for like all power. I was like, all powerful doesn't mean your ability to do anything. It means the ability to do anything that can be done. All knowing doesn't mean you know like all that is knowable and unknowable. It just means that you know all that exists. It doesn't mean you know all that exists and doesn't exist. That which doesn't exist can't be known, because it's not that it's like you're not smart enough or something. It's like it doesn't exist to be known. Something has to exist in order to be known. And this same thing happens in physics. Is like when people are like, you know, an observer is not required, or isn't required to be a conscious being. You know, observation does not require conscious being. You show me an instance in which a physics observation has been made absent a conscious being. People will be like, oh, well, there's this detector that we built that like, you know, picks up this photon, and it's like, you're still in this equation. You built the detector. You're looking at the results. Like, there's no way, you haven't been divorced from the situation at all, but they won't budge on the definitions of what it means. And because ultimately, and I don't want to say it's their sole motivation, but because I can't know, you know, you can't know the motives of others, just like you can't know the sentience of others for the same reason. But I would assume that a big part of it is that when you don't believe that there is someone who is, you know, who has will and is ultimately has their will be done, and you are within their being, meaning you're within their world. Like ultimately the default goal is always to win instead of to understand, because understanding is winning. When you can't win, beat the system, understanding that you can't beat the system and then trying to understand how to align with the system is the only way to win. But if you don't think that there is a system which is really like a willful system, who will inevitably win, like you think you can win. It makes sense. It's not illogical. It's just unfortunately not correct. But it is logical given certain assumptions. I used to be like this. My goal was to make as much money as possible and to win as many arguments as I could. And online, offline, whatever. And it wasn't to like understand. It was to win. Made sense, until I realized like, no, someone's will be done, and it's not going to be yours unless your will is aligned with that someone whose will is going to be done. It really does matter. That perspective. It frames all of your intellectual pursuits and goals. That when somebody says atheism is in fact a belief, it's like there's an argument of like, is atheism a belief or is it the absence of a belief? And it's like, no, the term is wrong. It's anti-theism is the correct term, not atheism. Atheism is an impossible concept, just like knowing that which doesn't exist is an incoherent idea. That's why it's impossible. It's like that God seems impossible to Stefan Molyneux, but that God doesn't exist. And you just realize that that's like, well, we need to stop arguing about whether or not atheism is a belief or not. Atheism is an incoherent term, but you have to know the correct definition of God in order to know that and understand it. And if you do that, then it's like you're going to go down a rabbit hole where like maybe you'll end up realizing that even anti-theism isn't ultimately coherent, but it is at least the term is conceptually coherent, but the belief is not coherent with your experience. And it requires a lot of humility to like kind of even entertain that possibility. I know, because I went through it. I stopped arguing with people online. Like I really am like I said I was arguing with Stefan Molyneux, but I really wasn't. Like if you listen to like how I said it, I try and ask questions. I was, I'm like, does existence require like fundamental existence require an outside cause? And he goes, no. I'm like, okay, true. You're right. Now, what about this? And it's different than like, you're wrong and this way wrong. And here's the 8 reasons exactly why you're an illogical fool. I used to be like that. And I lost friends over it. Regarding politics. 2016 election was tough for everyone. But it's, you ultimately like, Dennis Prager, I used to work for Dennis Prager, and He's not right about everything, but he is also one of the wiser men that I've met in the world. And he said, he would always say, I prefer understanding to agreement. And seeing him have discussions with people who he disagreed with the way that he did, instead of just trying to win a debate, was like one of the biggest wake-up calls for me in my life. It made me like realize a lot of things about even like how my feelings towards religious people and all kinds of stuff. But it was a lesson, and it's like, yeah, you should prefer understanding to agreement, because if agreement is the highest goal that you have, it's just, you just have a conquering mentality, because you can't actually get somebody to agree with you by force. They have to realize a new perspective, and you don't do that by humiliating them. As much as, you know, Dave Farina, Professor Dave, would disagree with me there. He's wrong. But physicists are suffering from a lot of this same thing. Is like, there's a lot that is implied by them being like, okay, yeah, like even simple things like, yeah, it does, an observation does require a conscious agent. By definition, it does. Or the idea that a string and a particle and a wave are just different perspectives, that none of which are fundamental. There's so much, even just admitting like a small thing, seemingly small thing like that, it's undermining of their own, like, all the schooling they've had, all the expertise that they've been attributed, like their whole life path, the competency of themselves in their whole life path. It's like sometimes people will literally would rather continue with kind of lying to themselves as best they can and to others, if it means the perception of competency, instead of embracing real competency, which means admitting that you were wrong, like when you realize it. And it's like, you don't even want to do that because it's scary. But the more you understand of what is true, the more competent you become. And so it's kind of like God sacrificing his will a little bit, actually maximizes his meaning and power. And which doesn't seem to make any sense. It's like you'd want to maximize your will and power by not giving it away, by not sacrificing it. And it's like, no, not in this context, not in a fundamental context at all. Same thing with, the more that you humble yourself, the wiser you actually get. And I mean actually humble yourself, not like this perceived humility that's like postury to people. That's the opposite of humility. But like actually humble yourself, the wiser you actually become, always. Fascinating. Anyways, I think it's probably almost time to call it. It is. I started at around 9:30. I've been trying to keep these to 3 hours or less, and I'm going to end it. Must go now. 1:13 a.m. here, doing a real beer run now. Well, thank you for tuning in. I really appreciate it. And with great pride, I run to get to the store before 2 a.m. I'm a ninja in training. My secret thing is I will get weed, and run like I'm in army training. There is nothing like it for real. Time to go. I'll finish watching this when I get back. Well, you don't have to do drugs to be a ninja. From one ninja to another. I practiced. I've done swordsmanship of all types throughout my life. I did fencing. I did Japanese swordsmanship for years. I have rifles over there that I train with. You don't need to do a bump of something, coke or whatever, and hit some weed in order to be a ninja, or run to the liquor store. You'll be a better ninja if you don't do that. Here, actually, speaking of, I will share before we go. I went shooting the other day, and I love shooting. I don't go very often. I train every day. I carry every day, and I train every day. When you train with a firearm, really, like, to get really good, you train what's called dry fire, and you don't go to the range all the time. That's not where most of your training comes. That's more like testing to make sure the gun works than it is like training for you. Most of the training that you get when it comes to like any weapons or martial arts is like on your own, shadow boxing, basically, like without hitting anyone or without shooting actual bullets. Just training with an empty gun, punching at the air, kicking at the air. I can't show firearms on live YouTube channel, but I can show a video. I love like any kind of martial training. Like, it's, as a man, I think it's very important to have some kind of it. You don't have to be obsessed with it as me, where it's like a lifestyle, but it has to be some type of lifestyle to some degree, because again, gender, like I said earlier, gender is like how we start to understand our responsibilities. And when, like, if someone needs to fight, for our lives, I'm not going to be like, tell my wife to go do it. I'm going to go do it and protect her. Like, I'm not going to have her ask her to do it, or even expect her to do it to protect me. That's just not, it doesn't make any sense. I'm much better at it because I'm a man. And so just naturally. And so that's why it's our men's responsibility. It's just because it is our like talent. With great power comes great responsibility. With any power comes responsibility. Yeah. So, anyways, from one ninja to another, you don't need to be intoxicated, and you shouldn't probably be intoxicated. You would be better not intoxicated. So, all right. Thank you, everybody. I hope this was entertaining, and please hit the like button and comment any questions you have in the comment section below, and I will answer them on a future stream. If you'd like to join our Discord, please private message me on Instagram, and I will send you the link. Somebody recently did that, and I really am happy that they did. I welcome them to the Discord. We have things coming up, and yeah, peace.